Rocky wasn't just an underdog boxing movie. It was a cinematic left hook that redefined Hollywood grit. Behind the sweat-soaked training montages and slow-motion punches lies a production story that's every bit as raw, bruised, and triumphant as the film itself. We're talking stolen shots on the streets of Philly, shoes held together with tape, and a cast built from desperation and stubbornness. Sylvester Stallone didn't just write Rocky, he lived it. This wasn't a role, it was survival. From a script scribbled in 3 days to a dog that almost got sold to strangers just so Stallone could eat, this movie's behind-the-scenes tale is as wild as any heavyweight bout. Get ready for 20 weird, untold, and downright unbelievable facts about Rocky. Plus, a final bonus fact that even die-hard fans probably missed. You'll never watch this classic the same way again. Let's step into the ring. 1. Stallone wrote the script in just 3 days. It wasn't months of polished rewrites. It was 72 hours of desperation. Sylvester Stallone banged out the first draft of Rocky in just 3 days after watching the Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner fight in 1975. Wepner, a relatively unknown boxer, managed to go 15 rounds with the champ. That spark, that idea of an underdog standing toe-to-toe with greatness, lit a fire under Stallone, who had just $106 in the bank and a pregnant wife. But here's the kicker. Stallone wasn't just writing a screenplay. He was writing a lifeline. He knew if this didn't sell, he might not recover. "I felt like Rocky," he later admitted. "Every rejection was a punch I had to take." What audiences didn't know is that the story of Rocky Balboa was eerily close to the story of the man who wrote him. 2. Stallone refused to sell the script. Unless he starred, United Artists offered Stallone $350,000 for the script, but they wanted a big star, not a no-name actor. Stallone refused. He turned down money he desperately needed, because for him, Rocky wasn't just a screenplay. It was his identity. "Nobody else can play this character," he told the studio, "because it's me." The studio countered with pressure. Stallone stood firm. The offer dropped to $75,000, then $35,000, but he held on. Eventually, they caved, with one condition. The film would be made on a shoestring budget of just $1 million. That act of stubborn integrity? It made Stallone a star, but in the moment, it nearly cost him everything. 3. Stallone was so broke, he sold his dog for $50. In the weeks leading up to Rocky's production, Stallone was flat broke. No income, no prospects, no choice. So he stood outside a liquor store and sold his beloved bull mastiff, Butkus, for $50. "It was either that or not eat," he said. It gutted him. After he sold the script and secured the role, the first thing he did wasn't celebrate. It was track down the man who bought his dog. The buyer knew who Stallone was now and demanded $3,000 and a cameo in the movie. Stallone paid it. And Butkus appears in Rocky, not just as a dog, but as a symbol of loss, loyalty, and redemption. 4. The studio gave them almost no budget, and it shows. With only $1 million to make the film, the production team had to cut corners. Hard. There were no expensive lighting rigs, no elaborate sets. Costumes came from the actors' closets. The meat locker scene? That was a real freezer. The neighborhood shots? Stolen without permits. Director John G. Avildsen said, "It was guerrilla filmmaking at its finest. We didn't have trailers. We didn't have chairs. We just shot." The Philadelphia winter was unforgiving, and extras were volunteers. But that raw, unpolished look, It wasn't planned. It was the result of necessity, and it gave Rocky its authentic punch. 5. The famous run up the steps was filmed without permission. No permits, no extras, no crowd control. That legendary scene, Rocky sprinting up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, was filmed on the fly. The crew hid out of sight. Stallone made the run multiple times, each time trying to time it perfectly with the limited light. There was no Steadicam at first, just a truck, a rickety dolly, and sheer determination. Only later did they use the new Steadicam technology for smoother shots, one of the first films to do so. The entire scene was improvised, and yet it became one of the most iconic moments in film history. Stallone's face was actually injured during filming. It wasn't just movie magic. Stallone took real hits. During one of the final fight scenes with Carl Weathers, a mistimed punch left Stallone with a swollen eye and bruised ribs. "I told him to hit me for real," Stallone said. "I wanted it to feel authentic." Weathers didn't hold back. At one point, the production had to pause filming for days to let Stallone heal. The result? A fight that felt brutally real. Because it was. The pain you see in Rocky's eyes? That's not acting. That's impact point 7. Carl Weathers insulted Stallone at his audition and still got the role. Carl Weathers almost blew it before he even started. At his audition, he boxed with Stallone and complained afterward, saying, "I'd do better if I had a real actor to work with." The room went quiet. Weathers didn't realize Stallone had written the script and was playing Rocky. Stallone loved the arrogance. "That's exactly who Apollo is," he said. Weathers got the part, not despite his cockiness, but because of it. What audiences didn't know is that the friction between Rocky and Apollo wasn't entirely scripted. Some of it was real. 8. They had to paint the empty seats in the final fight. The climactic boxing match between Rocky and Apollo Creed looks massive, but look closely. Something's off. That's because they couldn't afford extras to fill the stadium. Only a few hundred people were on set. The rest? Empty chairs, carefully darkened with black paint and camera angles. Stallone admitted it was movie fakery at its best. The illusion works because of the chaos in the ring, the tight shots, and the raucous sound design. Not a packed arena, but a painted ghost town. 9. Burgess Meredith wasn't the first choice for Mickey. The gruff, unforgettable trainer, Mickey almost looked very different. Producers initially wanted Lee Strasberg, the famed acting teacher from the Actors Studio. But when Strasberg passed, 68-year-old Burgess Meredith stepped in, transforming the character into a gravel-voiced, emotionally complex mentor. Meredith had been a stage legend and was known for lighter roles, but Rocky gave him grit. When he delivered the line, "You're gonna eat lightning and crap thunder," it wasn't just tough talk. It was a rebirth for him and for Stallone. 10. The final fight was choreographed like a ballet. Before we hit the next round, go ahead and like and subscribe, because these stories, they're just getting warmed up. Now, back to the ring. The final fight between Rocky and Apollo looks like brutal improvisation. In reality, it was mapped out punch by punch, like a dance. Stallone and Weathers rehearsed for weeks, learning over 35 pages of detailed choreography. Each round had its own rhythm, each jab a beat in a symphony of violence. Director Avildsen shot it like a war film, with sweat flying, blood spurting, and bodies collapsing in slow motion. The result? One of the most emotionally charged fight scenes ever filmed. 11. The Steadicam changed everything. Rocky was one of the first films to use the brand new Steadicam technology, revolutionizing how movies were shot. Before Steadicam, tracking shots were bulky and jarring. But with this tech, operators could glide alongside actors with smooth, fluid motion. Garrett Brown, the Steadicam inventor himself, shot Rocky's iconic run through the Philadelphia streets, right down to the steps. Brown's demo footage was so good, it convinced producers to use it in the final cut. The chase shots, the street runs, the museum steps, all feel like poetry in motion. Not by accident, but because the camera itself was reborn, just like the underdog it was filming. 12. The script. Originally had Rocky throw the fight. In early drafts, Rocky wasn't supposed to go the distance. He was supposed to lose on purpose. Stallone originally wrote a grimmer ending where Rocky takes a dive to survive. But after feedback from producers and a gut check, he rewrote it, not for a win, but for heart. That's why Rocky doesn't win the match, but still emerges victorious. Going the distance became the new triumph. The rewrite transformed the film from a boxing story into a fable about dignity. It wasn't about the belt, it was about the soul. 13th. Most of the extras were just random Philadelphians. When you see crowds cheering in Rocky, those aren't trained actors. They're real people, pedestrians, construction workers, kids from the neighborhood. The crew often shot without permits, asking bystanders to cheer or react on cue. In fact, many weren't even told what was being filmed. Stallone recalled, "People thought we were shooting a local commercial or something." This guerrilla-style approach gave the movie its raw, lived-in feel. The extras didn't fake excitement, they lived it. They weren't performing. They were reacting to the fight of a lifetime, even if they didn't know it yet. 14. Adrian was almost played by Susan Sarandon. Talia Shire wasn't the studio's first pick. Producers considered Susan Sarandon, Cher, and Bette Midler before settling on Shire, who had just come off The Godfather Part 2. But what sealed it was her chemistry with Stallone. During her screen test, she brought a tenderness and broken strength that perfectly matched Rocky's rough charm. Sarandon was deemed too pretty and too bold. They wanted someone quiet, someone damaged, someone real. Shire delivered. Her performance grounded the film with emotional depth and helped make the love story feel as raw as the fight itself. 15. The meat locker scene was almost cut. One of the most memorable training sequences in Rocky, punching sides of beef, was almost axed. The studio didn't get it. They thought it looked silly and cartoonish. But Stallone insisted. "This is how real guys train," he said, "in places with blood on the floor." The scene was shot in a real Philadelphia meat locker. It was freezing. The stench was overpowering. But Stallone swung until his knuckles bled. The result? A sequence that's now burned into pop culture history. It wasn't Hollywood glitz, it was working-class grit. And that's exactly what Rocky needed. 16. The turtles in Rocky's apartment were Stallone's pets. Cuff and Link, the two turtles Rocky speaks to in his apartment, weren't props. They were Stallone's actual pets. He'd had them for years before filming. When it came time to decorate Rocky's dingy apartment, Stallone brought them in, saying, "They're part of the character." Rocky would have them. Decades later, Stallone revealed that Cuff and Link were still alive, living in his home as geriatric turtle legends. It's a strange detail, but a personal one, and it speaks to how much of Stallone himself is stitched into every frame of Rocky. 17th Stallone hid his paralysis. During filming, What audiences didn't realize is that Stallone was secretly injured throughout production. Years earlier, a botched delivery at birth left parts of Stallone's face partially paralyzed, especially on the left side. It caused slurred speech and drooping features. During filming, he was deeply self-conscious. Some crew members thought he was drunk or struggling, but Stallone powered through, using the paralysis to add vulnerability to the character. It made Rocky seem unsure, hesitant, human. That mumble-mouthed boxer thing? It wasn't an act. It was Stallone turning weakness into power. 18, the film's composer, scored it in just 3 weeks. The unforgettable score, Gonna Fly Now, was written and recorded in a frenzy. Composer Bill Conti had only 3 weeks to deliver the music that would define a generation. He worked night and day, crafting orchestral punches to match Rocky's journey. The final product was recorded in a single session. Conti insisted the brass section stand while playing, to give the horns a physical power. And it worked. The moment that trumpet blares during the training montage? It's pure cinematic electricity. Conti wasn't just writing music, he was writing motivation. 19. The studio expected it to flop. Executives at United Artists weren't confident in Rocky. In fact, they predicted it would be a box office dud. They released it quietly, expecting modest returns, and didn't even push it hard during awards season. It opened in just a few cities. Then something unexpected happened. Rocky exploded. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Audiences saw themselves in the underdog story. Theaters were packed. Critics raved. And suddenly, the film that was supposed to fail became the biggest surprise hit of 1976. It wasn't supposed to work, and that's why it did. 20th. It won Best Picture, beating some true giants. At the 1977 Academy Awards, Rocky wasn't expected to win. It was up against All the President's Men, Taxi Driver, Bound for Glory, and Network. Films with big budgets, major stars, and powerful studios behind them. But when the envelope opened, it was Rocky, the scrappy $1 million movie from an unknown writer, that took home Best Picture. It also won Best Director and Best Editing. Stallone didn't win Best Actor, but he had already won something bigger: immortality. In a room full of giants, the underdog stood tall. Bonus fact: the original Rocky statue was almost destroyed. After Rocky III, a statue of Balboa was erected at the top of the Philadelphia Museum of Art steps. But controversy erupted. Critics and museum officials argued that it wasn't art. They demanded it be removed. The statue was carted away, twice. But public backlash was brutal. Philadelphians considered Rocky part of their soul. The outcry was so loud, the city finally moved the statue just off the steps, where it still stands today. What audiences didn't know is that even after conquering Hollywood, Rocky still had to fight for his place in history. Rocky wasn't just a movie, it was a miracle. Born from poverty, shot in chaos, and driven by heart, it redefined what a hero could look like. Stallone didn't just create an underdog, he became one, and reminded the world that victory isn't always about the knockout. Sometimes, it's about standing when everything says you should fall. If these behind-the-scenes punches hit you as hard as they hit us, go ahead and like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because every movie has a secret, and we're just getting started. Yo, Adrian, we told the truth.